Abraham Lincoln, The Power of Empathy and Understanding in Governance. What does it truly mean to understand another soul, to walk a mile in their shoes, to feel what they feel, and to see the world through their eyes? My name is Abraham Lincoln, and some have known me as a leader, a president, a liberator. But today, I speak to you as an advocate for the power of empathy and understanding in governance. Let us begin with a tale from my own life, a tale of a young country lawyer who believed that the strength of a nation lay not in its arms or its wealth, but in the hearts and the compassion of its people. In the early days of my law practice, I once represented a man who had been accused of a crime he did not commit. His accusers were influential, their words carried weight, and the scales of justice seemed tipped against him. Yet, in that courtroom, it was not just the law that I called upon, but empathy. I invited the jury to see not a defendant before them, but a man, a neighbor, a fellow human being, vulnerable to the same twists of fate that could befall any of us. In governance, this lesson is paramount. A leader must not govern from a high tower, separated from the plights and the joys of the people. No, a leader must walk among the populace, must listen, must empathize. For it is only through understanding the hearts of the people that a leader can truly serve them. Click subscribe to this channel. To get more profound lessons from the legend, consider the dark days of the Civil War, a time when brother fought against brother and the very fabric of our nation was torn. It was in those times I found that the strength to lead did not come from a place of rigidity or unwavering sternness. It came from understanding, from feeling the pulse of a nation's pain and striving to heal it. When I issued the Emancipation Proclamation, it was not an act of mere politics. It was an act of profound human empathy, recognizing the intrinsic right to freedom and dignity for all. Now you must ask, how can empathy and understanding manifest within your own spheres of influence? How can they guide your decisions, your leadership, and your interactions with those you serve? In the fabric of governance, the thread of empathy must be woven with care. It must be the bridge that connects policy to people, that transforms a law from words on a page to a lifeline for those in need. When I worked to pass the Homestead Act, it was with the understanding that the opportunity to own land, to build a home, to cultivate a piece of this vast earth was a fundamental human aspiration. As we delve into the essence of governance, we see that it is not a game of chess, maneuvering pawns and knights for the triumph of a king. It is a garden, where the gardener must understand the needs of every plant, must tend to them with care, must feel the soil between his fingers and the sun on his back. I once said, I have always found that mercy bears richer fruits than strict justice. Consider this not just as a platitude, but as a directive. For in the garden of governance, mercy is the water that nourishes, and strict justice without empathy is the scorching sun that withers. Now, think of the leaders you admire, the ones who have changed the world not just through might, but through understanding and compassion. How did they use empathy as their compass? How did it shape their legacy? As we progress through our discussion, remember that the lessons of empathy and understanding are not just for those in high office. They are for every one of us. Every person who seeks to make a difference, to lead, to serve, must first learn to understand. In the stories of my life, you will find a common thread, a belief in the goodness of people, in the power of a leader who listens, who empathizes, who understands. It is this belief that carried me through the darkest hours, that guided my hand when I signed the papers that would free millions, that gave me the words to speak to a nation in mourning at Gettysburg. Let us continue this conversation, delving further into the principles that can guide us in understanding the heart of governance. And as we do, let the stories of the past illuminate the path of the future, a future built on the solid foundation of empathy and understanding. The compassionate canvas, painting policy with the brush of human kindness. As we continue our discourse, let us turn to the second lesson that the power of empathy and understanding imparts upon us: the cultivation of unity and the dissolution of division. In my time, division was not just a threat. It was a living, breathing schism that tore at the very seams of our nation. The Civil War was not only a conflict of armies, but also of ideals, of moralities, and of the basic truths we held to be self-evident. In such times, empathy becomes not just a virtue, but a necessity. It is the balm that soothes wounds and the force that pulls together the fragments of a fractured society. Think of the moments when division seems insurmountable, when the chasm between sides appears too wide to bridge. It is in these moments that the true power of empathy is most needed and must be summoned with the greatest courage. When I addressed a divided nation at the second inaugural address, I did so with an understanding that the words spoken must not fan the flames of conflict, but must pave the path to peace. With malice toward none, with charity for all, was my invocation not just to end the war, but to begin the healing. Now, I ask you to ponder the divisions you witness in your own time. How can empathy and understanding serve as tools to mend the rifts, to bring people together under a common banner of shared humanity? Governance, when painted with the brush of human kindness, creates a picture where every citizen can see themselves. When we draft laws and enact policies, we must do so with the awareness that behind every statute are human faces, lives that will be touched by our decisions. Let us reflect on the moments when empathy transformed governance from a mechanism of power to an instrument of hope. When I advocated for the rights of those who had no voice, when I listened to the pleas of a nation in turmoil, it was empathy that steered my course. It was understanding that informed my actions. And so, it must be for any leader who seeks to be remembered not just for their triumphs, but for their humanity. It is the understanding of the farmer's toil, the laborer's sweat, the widow's tears that must inform the strokes with which we paint our policies. For governance is an art, and empathy is the hue that gives it depth and beauty. You, as aspiring leaders, as shapers of society, must ask yourselves, how will you use your brush? Will you paint with broad strokes of compassion, or with the fine lines of strict legality devoid of warmth? I leave you with a thought to carry forward. The better angels of our nature must be the muse that guides our hand in governance. It is they who whisper the truths of empathy and understanding into the ear of those who would lead. The harmony of hearts, orchestrating empathy in leadership. As we stride deeper into our exploration, let us focus on the third profound lesson, the symphony of empathy in creating harmonious leadership. In my tenure, I faced the discord of a nation out of tune with itself. The cacophony of conflict threatened to drown out the melody of unity. Yet, it is in the midst of such dissonance that a leader's capacity for empathy is most critically tested. To lead with empathy is to listen, to truly listen, not just to the loudest voices, but to the quietest whispers as well. In your own sphere, how often do you find that the noise of the many drowns out the needs of the few? To govern effectively, one must be attuned to all the voices in the symphony of society, recognizing that each has its part to play in the grand composition that is governance. Reflect on the times when a simple act of listening, of showing genuine understanding, has quelled the storms of discontent. I recall, during the deepest darkness of the Civil War, meeting with the mothers who had lost sons, the soldiers who had lost brothers. It was not as a president that I met with them, but as a fellow human being, sharing in their grief, understanding their loss. This empathy did not weaken my resolve. It fortified it, providing a clarity of purpose that only the heart's true comprehension can bring. Consider the power of empathy when it comes to the laws you enact, the policies you advocate for, and the decisions you make. Each of these has the potential to create harmony or sow discord. Through an empathetic lens, one can anticipate the ripples that each action may cause, ensuring that governance resonates with the needs and the hopes of the populace. Now, I ask you to turn inward and consider your own capacity for empathy. Are you listening to the diverse range of voices around you? Are you attuned to the silent struggles that speak volumes if only one would hear? It was empathy that guided my hand when I signed the legislation for the Transcontinental Railroad, understanding that to connect a nation physically would help to heal it emotionally. It was empathy that helped to bind the wounds of a nation, recognizing that reconstruction was not just about rebuilding cities, but about rebuilding lives. In leadership, you hold the conductor's baton. You have the power to harmonize or to create discord. Therefore, I urge you to lead not just with your mind, but with your heart, for it is the harmony of hearts that builds a legacy that endures. Whatever you are, be a good one. Let this simple maxim guide you. To be a good leader, a good citizen, a good human, empathy must be at the core of your being. It is the wellspring from which the water of compassion flows, nourishing the fields of governance. The embers of empathy, igniting the flame of enlightened leadership. As we draw this conversation to its close, let us gather around the final and perhaps most illuminating lesson, the role of empathy as the kindling that ignites the flame of enlightened leadership. In every leader's journey, there comes a moment when the path ahead is shrouded in shadows. It is in these times that the embers of empathy, glowing within, can light the way. For me, this moment came when our nation was torn asunder, and the future of the Union hung by a slender thread. It was empathy for my countrymen, North and South, that became my guiding light, helping to chart a course toward a new dawn for our nation. Imagine now the challenges that your own era faces, the complexities of a world interconnected yet divided, of societies rich in information yet often poor in understanding. How will you, as leaders of this age, ignite the embers of empathy within yourselves and others to cast light upon these challenges? Leadership demands vision, and empathy provides the clarity to see beyond the immediate horizon, to envision a future where the common good eclipses personal gain. It requires the courage to touch the embers when they cool, to fan them back to life, to ensure that the flame of compassion burns bright in times of darkness. In governance, empathy is not a sign of weakness, but a beacon of strength. It is what allows us to see not just the surface of issues, but their core. When I delivered the Gettysburg Address, it was empathy for a nation bereaved and battle-weary that shaped my brief yet enduring words. It was empathy that sought to heal the wounds of war and to inspire a sense of shared purpose. As you reflect upon the role of empathy in your leadership, consider how it might transform the landscape of governance. How might empathetic leadership change the way you interact with allies and adversaries alike? How might it influence the policies you support, the causes you champion, the vision you have for the future? The true measure of leadership is not found in the number of battles won or the wealth accumulated. It is found in the lives touched, the communities uplifted, the spirits kindled. Let the embers of empathy within you ignite a flame that lights up the world, a flame that warms those who are cold from neglect, that guides those who are lost in despair. Remember that the most enduring legacies are those that are built on the foundations of compassion, understanding, and mutual respect. As I once sought to bind up the nation's wounds, so too must you endeavor to mend the fractures in the world you inhabit. In conclusion, let the embers of empathy guide your way. Let them spark the flame of enlightened leadership within you. Let them illuminate the path to a future graced with peace, with justice, and with the unity of purpose that can only stem from a shared sense of humanity.